Welcome everyone to episode 5 of the Real Profit, Real Perspective podcast. Accountability is king. I'm Connor Malatesta, managing partner at Markoff and Malatesta CPAs, and I am joined by my cosmically ordained co-host, Ryan Bannister, owner of One Up Advisors. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I am just always looking forward to your adjectives that you can come up with on the
The
spot.
good news is the camera doesn't show. I do just have a thesaurus up on the other screen, and I am just gonna work my way down the list. That's why I'm at C right now.
So yeah,
But
we've got at least like 20 or more. So
I
adjectives here.
think there's enough words to get us through the amount of episodes that we totally have planned out at this point. All 500 episodes we plan on
Well, then
publishing over the next 10
hurricane
years.
season after that. You just start cycling through the Greek alphabet after
The alpha owner, the beta home owner. This is Ryan. He's a Sigma. This week he's a Gemini for all of you out there who are into astrology.
Yeah.
Mars is in retrograde this week, which means Ryan's having a bad week.
Oh man.
So this week's episode is on accountability, which is a direct follow-up to episode 4, all about decision making. Because when you make a decision, a lot of times what we've found, what really kind of makes or breaks whether the decision works is whether you hold yourself accountable to the results of said decision. It's really easy to say, I'm going to do this. I think literally everyone at the end of the year, around Christmas, coming up onto New Year's, sits there and goes, I've got all of these new resolutions for next year. I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to get up before 10 a.m. I'm going to write that book I've always talked about. And then come mid-January, all that's gone. Usually that comes from a lot of lack of accountability for keeping ourselves accountable. And this isn't targeted. God knows I've done that. Every year I go, I'm going to set an alarm, get up at 6 a.m. and be a morning person. And nope, I have given up on that one.
Yeah, that went out the window.
I try as I might, I cannot fight my biology. I am nothing but a morning person, but it makes me feel good in the moment. But
Yep.
That really gets into the core of a lot of this. And I think a lot of times you could probably double or replace the phrase accountability with personal development, because it really starts to feel like two sides of the same coin.
And development and awareness, I would say, on being able to recognize that something needs your attention, or like you being able to realize that this needs evaluating, whether it's the minute menial tasks that, for me, one example I can think of easily is after meetings with clients, putting the meeting notes into my CRM. And for some reason, it's just something I was never did. Like occasionally I would put it in there, but always something I want to do, to be able to, have that record and keep track. And that, I think, is an easier task to hold yourself accountable to, like by automating it. So it's not necessarily holding yourself accountable as always like grilling yourself over things you're not doing. Like there's easy fixes to some of these things, and the sooner you get it done, the easier life is. But then you get to the bigger tasks, like evaluating where your business is or growth over the last year, those things. So sort of like in the decision-making episode, what we talked about in breaking up decisions into smaller chunks and smaller tasks along the way that you can evaluate. I think you have to do the same thing to hold yourself accountable to that and be able to also give yourself like the small win where you can check something off of a checklist and give yourself that little like hit of dopamine that you need to feel good, you know? So
Yeah, I think accountability, particularly when if you're not careful, there's a bit of a slippery slope to going. We've all been there, where it usually the conversation to yourself internally pretty much devolves into a I should be doing this, I should be doing that, and it's
hmm
just that constant. We've all been there. Uh, I was literally thinking about that last night of all the things I should be doing. To go I've got to give my business partner a lot of credit. He is amazing at taking notes during client meetings. So, my amazing business partner, Matt Markoff, who, if he is listening to this, deserves tons of credit for actually writing down notes during client meetings and making notes of important things and then having those go into the client records and get all that transcribed and all that stuff. He is amazing at doing that. In contrast, I am atrocious at taking notes. I'm going to be totally honest and own up to this one. I am god awful when it comes to taking notes about things. It is probably a bad habit that started in college because when I was sitting in a lecture, I was too lazy to actually take notes for things. And so instead, I would go and do a bunch of studying on the side. Well, turns out that that doesn't really fly when you're having client meetings and trying to remember what the hell did we talk about 6 months ago? I don't remember that meeting at all.
hmm
And knowing that, instead of sitting there and saying I should be taking notes, which I should be taking notes, I use in throat buzzword an AI transcription, note taker that I know a lot of our clients use as well. I'm not going to plug any of them because they haven't paid us, but we have those in meetings so that it will take transcription and put notes together so that I can have those without having to sit there and remember to actually do them myself because I know myself. I know I'm good at a lot of things, but taking notes like that, I am
Yep.
not. I have tried, I have failed, I have given up on that portion. And so I have compensated by having a tool do it for me.
Exactly.
And I think, and it really, that's like a microcosm of a lot of how accountability really works. The important part of it is not to get on yourself and get into that cycle of I should be doing this, I should be doing that, because that has a tendency to just kind of beat us down. I've done it. I've definitely been there. And instead it's the okay, I need to do this instead of saying I should be doing all this. What are the ways where I can give myself some of that leeway where I can still say this is what I got to do. I got to hold myself accountable to doing this thing, but how can I adjust it? I mean, a lot of the thing about being in business when it comes to accountability, as I tell a lot of my clients that are new business owners. And so for a moment, I'm going to speak here just to the solo entrepreneurs like yourself that, and I know we've agreed upon about this and talked about it a lot, but the beauty of being a solo entrepreneur is that every success that you have is entirely yours. You get to claim credit for every good thing that happens to you. But on the other side, everything that goes wrong, everything that doesn't perform well, you do not have anybody else who you can say, well, it's their fault this didn't work.
Yep.
It is entirely on you. And
Yep.
that is a reality that a lot of new business owners are, speaking frankly, not prepared for, in that in some form or another you're going to be forced to have to confront your own shortcomings because they are
Right.
going to make themselves known as you go through the customer or client acquisition process, performing the work, going through sales, trying to get paid. The biggest one that most new business owners struggle with is sales and selling. Well, I'm not a good salesperson. You in this, and I'm going to use the word accountability. It's going to be our word of the episode here. That's why it's in the title. But you have to hold yourself accountable to the fact that you have to get good at sales if you want to be in business. It is a fundamental fact in the beginning. Later on, you get people to do that, and that's that compensating. But you have to acknowledge that you are accountable for sales for the business. And so you have to do something to deal with the fact that you may not be good at it. It's the whole putting your head in the sand thing of, well, I'm just going to ignore it. That's the lack of accountability that really bites a lot of people, is not addressing core fundamental problems.
Yeah.
We deal a lot as well when a lot of new clients come to us because their previous accountants are terrible at communication. Oh, I'm not good at responding to emails on time. Well, you're losing work. You gonna hold yourself accountable to the fact that it's costing you money, or are you gonna just say, well, that is what it is. I'm not going to make any adjustments, but I don't understand why I'm not getting the work that's supposed to be coming in.
Right.
And that's really the core of accountability right there, is to deal with the problem.
Yeah, and I think from that too, as a business owner, you are just default signing up to do the little things that you don't necessarily have to do when you're working for someone else, or when you start this, you have to accept that fact that you are every little thing is under your umbrella. And I think for a lot of, at least on the solo entrepreneur side, or when you're first starting out, you're doing something that you're really good at, and you can provide this service or like a product that you make really well. So it's really easy to get focused in on just that thing and let other little things in the business fall out. And then something breaks, or the business isn't growing like you think it should. So that's when you have to sit down and say, am I doing everything I need to do this thing? And I think sales is a big one, at least for me in my experience, where, like, I mean, we talked about it in the decision episode, like the first 6 months for me were really slow business. So then you have to sit down and say, well, why is this way? And you change that too. So, I think from there too, like, a lot of people talk about accountability groups and masterminds. What do you think of using third parties like that to hold
Um,
accountable?
well, speaking as somebody who oftentimes ends up turning into an accountability coach for clients, I mean, I can speak from firsthand experience. Sometimes it is easier to have somebody, even if they don't have any real power over you, but to have somebody who's going to call you out on your bullshit and say, you said you were going to do this, you didn't do it, why didn't you do it?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you can't, well, it was this, you're giving me excuses here. This is a thing that has to happen.
Yeah.
It's a funny little thing that if you really want something to happen, you'll find a way to make it happen. I don't remember which motivational video I heard that from. I was in the middle of a workout, so I was semi-delirious at the time. Anyway,
Yep.
but that really is what it boils down to, is the masterminds and all that in the groups. It really, from my perspective, if it works, I'm not really going to say, no, you shouldn't be doing that. We're all different. We all have our various strengths, our various weaknesses, our different things that work for us. So if somebody wants to use or needs an accountability coach, just don't pay out the ass for some. Some of them charge more than we do, and I exploring that as an additional business model, because that one's easy. I will gladly get paid $10,000 a month to hold you accountable for
Right?
stuff. Shit, I'll do it. Honestly, I'll do it for less. It's fun to sit there and say to people, well, why aren't you doing this?
Yep.
But it really gets down to whatever is going to work for you to hold you accountable to the stuff that's going on. And really what I have found is the accountability is almost is easiest in the beginning, because in the beginning of starting the business, because it is just you. So in a way, you have a lot more slack as to what standard you're going to hold yourself to for what you're trying to do, whatever that level of professionalism is that you're striving to reach, and you get to kind of set that level. Now, of course, that always comes with the challenge of you get to set the level, which means you can either hold yourself to a high or low level. But once you become a manager of a business, you hit that more overseer role. Now you're not just accountable to yourself, but you have a team that is going, you both have to hold them accountable, and they are going to hold you accountable. There's a book that I've read. I've read it a couple times up to this point, and I'm actually debating. I think I'm going to require everybody that's on my team to read it. I've already started ordering copies. It's called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Jocko, of course, is got a far more famous podcast than this one. Former Navy SEAL, real life badass, does a bunch of management consulting. Somebody who I've tried to take a lot of lessons from because he's got some real shit figured out because he's led teams into combat and done all that. But the whole idea behind that is that you as the leader are the ultimate one responsible for everything that happens. And to have an effective team, you must take extreme ownership of everything that happens to the team. One saying from the book, I'm sure it's not just from the book, it's been said all over, is there are no such things as bad teams, only bad leaders. And a big portion of true effective leadership comes down to accountability. When you are telling people what to do, which is a big portion of being a leader. And if you're in an organization, I have my team, I tell them what to do. When you're telling people what to do, hypocrisy is one of the easiest ways to completely destroy any type of team cohesion, to just really kill the roots of anything good at the source. If you tell your team, for example, that everybody needs to be logged in and working by 8 a.m., but you yourself don't get logged in until 10 because you say, well, I'm the boss, I should be able to do that. You're right. You can. You are the boss. But when you start having problems with the team not performing to the standards they should be at and starting to get pushback because they're not being held to a standard that you would hold yourself accountable to, you have nobody to blame for yourself. And what I've seen with a lot of clients when we have deep-seated organizational problems is that there becomes a lack of accountability of the people in charge.
Mhm.
They don't go through that decision making process to make decisions and then follow through on the decisions and then look at what can we do better. You know, if you're the one that's in charge and you say everyone's responsible for getting me all these leads and then I'm going to follow up on these leads and go do the cold calling, and then you never do that, they give you the leads but then you don't do anything with them, what the hell do you expect the next time you try to do some sort of outreach or whatever, or some initiative or something where you're telling everybody to put in this work and everybody's looking at you going, you know, we did all that shit last time and you didn't do anything with it. Why are we doing this again? You know, you have an obligation to them to perform in the same way they have an obligation to you to perform. And
Yeah.
that is the heart of accountability in anything, is just follow through, really.
Yep. And I think on like you brought up something that I've found out for myself is figuring out who the stakeholders in this whatever decision or task it is, like it can be just you, like to the working out example or something like that earlier, or in a business it can be your employees, your partner, or for me in some things, like my wife and my son. And if you aren't living up to the standard that you set, you are only cheating yourself or you're cheating your other stakeholders, which, debatably is even worse. Whichever one
Yeah.
is worse, I don't know. But um, that's something I've found that has been really helpful too in helping me hold myself accountable to things, is figuring out who else is involved in this that or has a stake.
Yeah, and there's weirdly enough, the thing that I have found that's helped me the most, particularly as the team has expanded, is as every time we hit a new level, I find a new thing I'm bad at. Which is great because I
Yeah.
like to be good at things. Being bad at things sucks. Having to constantly find, oh, here's this new thing I'm screwing up, or I didn't do this, or yep, totally dropped the ball on that one, is always a fun thing. And I'm pretty certain that just gave me an idea. We should do an episode on resiliency,
Mm.
which I think will be more of a just a trauma dump of things and saying that here's how you just get through stuff. Because
Well, right.
definitely
I
don't
mean,
have that one
this will
figured
lead
out
to
yet.
you identifying flaws in yourself or things that you aren't necessarily going to be proud of, you know?
Yeah, it's having to sit there and do that constant self-reflection of God, here's the things I'm bad at is I mean it's both the best thing you can do to grow as a person. Weirdly enough, just as a tangent, I have found that gets easier the more you do it.
Yeah.
In a weird way, when I first started doing some really serious self-reflection when I got started, there's a lot of books out there about ego and kind of that inner, I think they call it the inner id or whatever. I'm forgetting some of the stuff that I read in college, but the core part of a lot of the problems for the self-reflection kind of came from my ego when I got started. Now I can say through firsthand experience that that ego was beaten out of me by constantly being bad at things because I couldn't help but notice that I'm shit at a whole bunch of stuff.
Yep.
Now, I'm not shit forever. I constantly work on it to get a little bit better. But in the beginning, it was rough having to sit there and realize I've got all these things I'm just not good at. But I got lucky and ended up reading another one of Jocko's books early on before I really got started in the business. But it had in there still that idea of extreme ownership. And so in the beginning, I worked to just kind of internalize the idea of looking at everything from what could I do better to prevent this
Mhm.
from happening again. And weirdly enough, over the last 5 years, that has gotten easier to do. It's much like working out, which is probably why I still haven't figured out that one. I am terrible at consistently working out. I do that constant cycle of start and stop.
Oh, yeah.
But weirdly enough, over the last 5 years, it has gotten easier to just internalize knowing that I've got things I'm going to be bad at and working to be better at what we're doing. The beginning was the worst because every time, particularly because I was younger than I am now, had less experience, and so it again came from I want to be good at stuff, and so being
Mhm.
bad and making mistakes felt fucking terrible. Sitting there going, "Am I cut out for this?" I thought I was good at and knew how to do these things, but oh
Yeah.
my god, I'm screwing all this up. But as that's gone, and as I just realized that that really is just as part of the absolutely painful process of personal development, that it weirdly enough has gotten easier. And that internalization of just doing that self reflection and saying, oh, I got to do this better. I have found that now I can identify areas where I'm not good at. And instead of really beating myself down about it, I go, okay, how can I adjust accordingly?
Mhm.
Sometimes, so here's a total transparency. I am terrible at sending follow-up emails for projects when we need to do additional documentation requests and things. I'm going to be honest, I'm terrible at it. I have noticed if I'm not careful, I'll make the mistake of nope, I'll take care of sending the follow-up for that. Don't worry about it. What happens? Week goes by, I didn't send the email, I got distracted by something else. Now my team is sitting there going, "Yo,
Yep.
what the hell is going on here? You said you were going to send this," and I go, "Shit, yeah, I completely dropped the ball on that one." And I know that we have also been at places where I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. We've seen that cycle play out time and time again, and so what I had to do is basically speed up some delegation of some parts of the process. Instead of trying to hold all of the communication to myself to talk to the client, I said, all right, if I'm doing all of that for these basic things, I'm going to get distracted. I'm going to forget about it. I just have a tendency for some of those because I got other shit going on. It's not fair to my team to be held up in behind because of my crappy habits.
Right.
And so I pretty much said, okay, you guys can do some of these for some of these requests. It doesn't need to go through me. I went through and said, here's how the emails need to be set up. Here's how we're going to do this and all that. Made sure that they understand how to communicate and all of that. Said, you guys go and do it. I need to cut myself out of that because I will cause problems, which is going to cause the team problems. And I know that they can handle that instead. And so I delegated that away from me now at this point, now that I have the luxury of having people to be able to delegate work to. But it really was holding myself accountable for I can't keep doing this to them, to the client, to myself. What am I going to do in response? And sometimes the answer is I don't need to do everything. I need to give it to somebody else to take
Yeah.
care of, which for a type A personality like me, for at least work related stuff, was a struggle in the beginning to kind of let go, as the as some of the spiritualists will say, is just letting go of that part and letting somebody else take care of it.
Yeah, and not having to, you don't have to go become an expert on every topic. If you're able to recognize that, like, your weaknesses, and that's why I brought up automation earlier. Like, you're delegating it to a robot at that point, then that's great. Uh, that's super helpful for me as a solo business owner, is having robots on the team. So that, and anywhere you can outsource a task, or if there's something that is integral, like sales or any, I don't know, other topics that you can go practice at, or you want to, that's another way you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, it all kind of comes down. I think the core part is, how do I want to word this, is you have to honestly assess and hold yourself accountable for what has to happen. And when you start there and say, okay, I honestly want to make this better. I want to be better about doing this, right? I want my end goal to be better. Then you have the opportunity to look, because I don't want someone to get the wrong impression and think, oh, if I'm bad at things, I should just let everybody else take care of it, because that's not
Mm-hmm.
really what the lesson here is. It's not a, if you're bad at something, just give it away to everybody else. You still have to work on that. There are certain fundamentals that you just need to get better at. You can't just abdicate everything
Right.
away to everybody else, because then at that point, what are you really doing? But you have to take an honest look and go, okay, there's, what can I do to make myself better? What is such a problem that right now I do need to enlist additional support because it's going to cause operational issues, lost money, lost clients? And what are the things that are not as big of a deal? And I'm just going to slowly work on those myself, because I need to challenge myself to do that, because it is important that you continue to work on those weaknesses. A lot of people will say, play to your strengths. That's true. But don't disregard the things that you're bad at, because you can go from being absolutely bloody terrible to just kind of awful.
Yep.
And it still prevents other problems from happening. You don't need to be an expert, but you still want to bring up those areas that are weaknesses, because that's part of just personal development. And the whole, really, the core of being a business owner that I think I have had to learn over the last 5 years of doing all this is that it really is a journey of personal development, regardless of what you're doing, regardless of your industry, regardless of how you make money. You, as the owner going through everything, are going through a journey of personal development. And the organizations I've seen that have the worst problems that at times sometimes become unsolvable are those that don't acknowledge that, or if they do, they don't really confront their own demons,
Mm-hmm.
really, and instead they just continue to operate as they have been. But
Yeah, like, we've seen owners of businesses who just totally disregard the accounting of it, and they think because you have a CFO or a controller in place, like, yeah, I don't have to know any of this, they got it. But I
I'm
mean,
gonna interject. I've had somebody literally tell me they were a creative marketing type or whatever, um, where they literally told me, well, I'm a creative type. I'm very, hyper focused. I've got ADHD and I can hyper focus on the projects, but I'm creative. I'm not good with the numbers and making sure bills are paid on time and stuff like that. But I'm a really hyper focused creative type.
hmm
And the not being good at numbers, what do you think the whole point of a business is? The whole point is to make money. The whole business is numbers.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so when you approach it from that thought process of, well, I'm not good at the numbers, I need somebody else to take care of that, you're the 100% owner of your business. You don't get to just abdicate all of that responsibility to somebody else. As I tell clients, I am an advisor. I am not the owner. If I'm the owner, our relationship is going to be extremely different.
hmm
A
yeah,
lot more. I'm going to tell you what to do, and I'm going to expect you to listen. But that that kind of sums up something I've seen other business owners as well say. They aren't a client, so I can say that. Um, but I mean that right there is people that go, oh, well, I'm just not good with the numbers. That's the whole fucking point is money. Money is your business, and if you don't
yep,
understand the business and the money and the numbers, you have no one to blame when you burn through hundreds of thousands of dollars and end up having to go to bankruptcy because
yeah.
the business failed. You don't get you can't you don't get to say, oh, I don't want to deal with the money. What is the point of that? What are you doing all this for? Go work for somebody else where you don't want to worry about that. Sorry,
Yeah,
just a
and
little
what I
little
see with
rant.
clients on the personal side and investing in particular with their portfolios is they don't understand it at first, so they want to outsource it and get help, and that's it. So a lot of my piece is education for clients because I'm not going to let you off the hook. Like you have to understand what you're invested in regardless of how you get there, like you got to know what's going on because in the event that we ever stop working together or something like that, you have to know what is taking place, even if it's at a basic level where you can tell another person this is what was happening and this is why we did it. So not to
Yeah.
tangent or preach, but yeah.
I mean, a lot of this is probably going to turn into a bit of a rant for both of us. But I mean, it really, I think for me, what gets me about that is the core of a lack of accountability. Is that, well, I just don't want to know about it, or I'm not good at any of that stuff, and
Yeah.
so I'm gonna make it somebody else's problem. And particularly when you're talking about money, which is probably the most intimate thing that any of us will deal with.
Absolutely.
As I tell clients, the only ones that are going to know you better than your accountant is your doctor and your priest. And these days, priests are a little more few and far between, and healthcare is way too expensive. So
hmm
that leaves accountants as the end all be all of confession. But what gets me about it is, particularly when you talk about the various articles out there and all that about the lack of financial literacy with everyone, is that a lot of that comes down to people just not holding themselves accountable for these are the fundamental things that you have to be in charge of. I'm not good at spending. I'm terrible at managing my money. I spend it. I what do you this is where we have to step and go, what are you expecting us to say? Oh my god, I'm so sorry. It's like, well, I can solve that problem for you. Just give me all your money. I'll give you a little bit back, and there you go. That's what you have available to spend. But it's a I'm just not good at that. You don't get the luxury of not being good. It will have consequences. In a worst case scenario,
Yep.
it'll fucking kill you. You'll run out of money and you won't be able to eat. You won't afford your house. You'll be homeless. These have real consequences, which is why we take it so seriously, particularly when we hear anyone say, well, I don't know, or I don't want to deal with that. I
Yeah.
what do you expect that life is going to say, well, that's okay, then we're just gonna make sure money shows up in your bank account? You don't. It's not how it works. It's not how any of it
Yeah,
works.
and the first rule we started out with for businesses applies to your personal finance as well. You have to spend less than you make.
Yeah,
And it's a
it's
total shirking of that responsibility when, you know, that's on the behavioral side of finance, which is really fun for me to work with clients on. And yeah, the education piece. So
so. When are you going back and getting your master's in psychology again?
I know, right? There is a certification for a financial therapist actually out there.
Oh God,
Yeah,
I,
it is
the
real.
the
It's real,
the
man.
nightmare that would have, the people coming and spending too much, shopping sprees and all that stuff
I
would just
get darn
be.
close to it.
We deal with it in the business with people that run the businesses as if it's their own personal bank account and go, well, we're
Yeah.
constantly out of money. Well, no shit, you're running all the personal expenses through the business. It's paying for your house, your vehicles, your everything. You don't have any money left because you're sucking everything out and then wondering why you've got the fundamental cash flow problems. The ones
Mhm.
I always struggle with is when I have to tell clients that, and that is something a lot of them don't like to hear, is the you can't just suck all of the money out, because that's the emotional component of everything as well. It's my business, why shouldn't I? We should add to our planning list to just a rant about some of this stuff. I think this episode's turning more into the tail end tough love
Yep.
episode here, but I mean, the going back to real perspective on here, keeping it real. This is reality is going to kick you in the teeth whether you like it or not.
Yep.
We don't, unless you are a trust fund baby that has guaranteed money coming in, which even then, whoever then owns the trust is the one that has to keep eyes on everything. We don't have the luxury of hiding from reality, because one way or another, it's going to make itself known.
Yeah, you're gonna hit your
And
credit limit eventually on
it's
something, figuratively or literally.
literally, yeah, suddenly all the cards are turned off, and you're looking at being evicted from your place, or the bank is closing on your mortgage because you don't have money left over. And these are serious consequences to these things, which is why accountability really is the core to a lot of this, because really accountability is confronting reality, which I'm sure anyone listening would agree is a hard thing for a lot of people to do. Now, usually everybody thinks they're good at confronting reality. It's everybody else that is the problem.
Right.
Um, because everybody is, a rational, intelligent person that makes only the best decisions. It's everybody else that is the problem. Not me. I know I also don't make rational decisions.
Everything I do is pre-approved as correct by me.
I am perfect, and all of you should listen to what I say. Never mind all the other things I said I was really bad at. But I mean, that's it. That's this episode, is just you're gonna have to confront reality one way or another, because otherwise it's gonna confront you, and then you just have to deal with it. And anyone that's dealt with serious life altering events knows how quickly things can turn around. And the part of this is to just try and help people understand this is what you have to do. We aren't here to tell you what you want to hear. That is a different podcast where we'll call it Fake Perspective, Fake Profit. And it will only be, every episode is a feel good, you are amazing, nothing you do is wrong, you are perfect, and then we'll have 30 minutes of affirmations and a guided meditation and all that stuff. That's not this one.
Nope.
This one is, here's the real shit that's
Yeah.
gonna
You're only
hurt.
cheating yourself if you're not doing it, you know.
Yeah, and particularly when you're talking business, which at its core is the most competitive game in the world that you can play. If you don't confront reality, your competitors will, and they will take advantage of it,
Yep.
and then you will lose even more. It's felt a little closer when you're talking about professional services, because our what we're competing with is directly our skills, knowledge, and expertise against other professionals with their skills, knowledge, and expertise. And so
Yeah.
we have to get better to be able to beat them. But in anything you're doing, it is just competition. It all boils down to, I'm going to call it a game. But that's really, I think, what a lot of people forget about is that you are engaged in a direct competition with other people. And as anyone who's ever played an online multiplayer game knows, some of those people are really, really good at what they do.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, going back to my earlier example, like that's sort of the realization I had with something simple like the meeting notes. You know, looking into that and saying, what are the best advisors out there doing? They may not be personally putting the notes into the CRM, but they have a system for it. And I'm like, well, if I'm not doing this thing, they're going to beat me. Something is going to happen where, you know, you have to do the little things, and not saying I'm perfect by any means, but that's what I came to on that one, and that issue has since been resolved. So
anyone who's ever been in a anyone who ever has been in a meeting with me knows I've got my little note taker that's in there. I mean, if there's
yeah.
I hate having to confront the parts of me that are terrible or that I am bad at, but you know what I hate even more? Losing.
Yep.
I really fucking hate to lose. That's the one. If I had to sum up everything, it's yep, I will confront the worst parts of myself in order to win through sheer skill in getting better. Because
100%.
God, do I hate losing. I absolutely, it's one of those you can't really beat me because I'm just gonna whatever. You may beat me once, I'm gonna come back again. I'm gonna come back again. I'm gonna come back again. Fucking hate to lose until you finally go, well, you've got hundreds of millions of dollars. I have hundreds of dollars. We're not gonna win in terms of a budget battle, so we're gonna pivot. Or congratulations, you win this one. I'll be back later.
Yep.
But that's God, I hate losing. Every time it's, oh, we went with somebody else. That's fine. We'll win. We're gonna get better and better here.
Yep.
But that I think we've got a good. This has been a good episode as we've been ranting a little bit here, but it really is our final closing thought. Accountability is just dealing with all the shit and really dealing with it, not just doing half feel good measures of I'm writing a dream diary because I'm doing whatever, and this makes me think I'm more on top of stuff. Or I have my list of goals for the year, and you know it's all planned out, and I have everything. What are you really doing? You know, cut the bullshit. What are you really doing? Hold yourself actually accountable and do the stuff so that you can get better. Because once you're better, things do get better, no matter what it is you're doing.
Yeah, I hope this episode fires some people up because it has fired me up.
Good rant always does that.
Oh yeah,
all the nothing like somebody saying nothing gets me more than I don't like numbers. It just isn't for me. It's like I'm all right. I gotta hop off a meeting. I gotta go scream into the corner.
Yep.
But unlike our previous ones, I don't think we've got a direct segue from this into something else. We'll figure something out. But hopefully this helps everybody out. Bye, everyone.